Corradino.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. This is a critically important topic for all of us in Miami-Dade County, particularly South Dade. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. I'm excited to have our next guest, which is Dale Ketcham from Space, Florida. And before we introduce Dale, we'd like to run a little video. But look, let's talk about why the space industry, why we want to talk to somebody from the space industry. We've all looked to the stars since we were children. We all looked at traveling from the Earth's surface up into the moon and beyond. But now we have the reality that in the state of Florida, we have this reemergence of the space industry. And they rely heavily on tech, smart technology. We know that South Florida has been tasked to be the next tech hub of the industry for maybe the region. And so let's get into what that looks like as it relates to economic development. But if you can allow us for 1 minute, I'd like to introduce the video. Tommy, can we run the video and then bring on Dale and get right into the meat of the conversation? Because I think it's going to be a rather lively conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
Good.
Space Florida is committed to growing the aerospace industry in the Sunshine State. To do this, Space Florida uses a unique toolbox given to it by the governor and the Florida legislature. Inside the box are many creative financial enticements and solutions that can help businesses decide to locate or grow in Florida. What is the toolbox and what's inside? Space Florida is an independent special district of the state, similar to an airport or seaport authority. It's a politically created corporation capable of earning profit, borrowing money, and partnering with commercial business, as well as federal, state, and local governments. This makes Space Florida more flexible than most state entities when it comes to acting as an industry partner or an agent of economic development. One of the most frequently used tools in the Space Florida toolbox is called conduit financing, a way to get quick funding to pay for property or infrastructure that is repaid as a long-term loan or lease. This allows a company to access cash quickly and defer payment while using existing capital more strategically. Space Florida can provide financial efficiencies for business by constructing deals that lower overhead and operating costs on an annual basis. One way to this is with a synthetic lease, a kind of operating lease structured in such a way that it's not recorded as an asset or liability on a balance sheet. Instead, it's an expense. The biggest benefit to a synthetic lease is it enables businesses to defer large expenditures or spread them out over multiple years. Space Florida has the ability to secure property and rights to infrastructure from federal, state, and local governments for commercial use on behalf of the business. Space Florida can conduct business-to-business deals for property on commercial terms, freeing businesses from the usual insurance, safety, and labor constraints associated with the use of government facilities. We can create commercial islands within otherwise restricted areas. Space Florida can use one or a combination of all the instruments it has at its disposal to build a lasting relationship with businesses and help bolster a company's bottom line. By making use of these tools, your company has a genuine opportunity to grow its business to its full potential, finding a lasting home in Florida.
What a powerful video. What do you think, Mayor?
Remarkable. Right?
Remarkable, right?
Wouldn't even have known it existed before this. So pretty impressive idea. Now, how do you capitalize on it as a local government or a county or something like that?
Well, let's talk about this. But before we go into Dale, bringing Dale on, just for our viewers' information, we will have Miami-Dade Mayor Daniella Levine-Cava. She'll be joining us at the end of the hour, actually in the half of the hour at 12:30. She's breaking away from meetings to be able to engage us in this conversation. So I look forward to having her on. So without further ado, Dale, good morning. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Robert. Nice to see you again, Mayor.
Same.
So we just featured the promotional video on Space Florida, what Space Florida is all about. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on, your role there, and also what's going on with Space Florida?
Well, we're excited. Things are going real well for us, which is representative, I think, of the issue we're trying to present both to the nation and in Tallahassee and regionally is that aerospace, which is our primary well, it is our charter, has been a really aggressive part of growth, positive growth economically over the last 10 years, particularly because the vast majority of the jobs associated with it are high skilled, high wage, which is exactly what we all need. But then even during the pandemic, we've managed to demonstrate a real resiliency because Florida has shown, we can return humans to the International Space Station from Florida after the first time in 9 years, managed to launch a number of national security payloads, and Elon Musk has put almost 1,000 commercial satellites into orbit, all during the teeth of the pandemic. So we're looking forward and have everything lined up to be a big part of the economic recovery of the state coming out of the pandemic. And part of the vision we have is that space is going to become an increasingly broader enterprise of human activity. And that's going to require, if Florida is going to succeed, that much more than just a launch site and a satellite manufacturing facility and rocket manufacturing. We're going to need to harness the industrial and intellectual and academic of the entire state to position Florida as the dominant location for space on the globe, just in the United States. So working with South Florida is a big part of our plan.
Outstanding. So, Mr. Mayor, any thoughts on what Dale just mentioned about Space Florida being the economic development arm of the state of Florida when it comes to the aerospace and I would say aviation as well, industry?
Yes.
Our focus my focus is in South Dade, and what we're trying to do is bolster the economy of South Dade. And we look at all of the things that go into having a well-functioning society, whether it's transportation, housing, affordable housing, well-paying jobs. And I think what we're lacking right now in South Dade is employment. We've got lots of people. I mean, people are moving to South Dade at unprecedented numbers, probably the fastest growing part of Miami-Dade County, but there's really nowhere for them to work at this point in time. Employment hasn't kept up, and the affordable housing crisis pushes them further and further away from their jobs. So if we could link up with a partner like Space Florida and explore our assets, their assets, how we could come together, perhaps it's a great opportunity to bring those well-paying jobs to the people that live in South Dade. And that could be a wonderful opportunity. Certainly what we need here in South Dade.
So for all transparency reasons, right? I met Dale when I was in the legislature, and immediately I was drawn to him because he was on the same topic of, how do we feed the growing space industry through workforce development? And that's how we met, right, Dale? And then,
yes, sir.
And then the more I got involved, the more intrigued I was as to the fact that although you're in Tallahassee, the Cape is in the central part of the state, but how you were looking at, and your office was looking at bringing the entire state together to feed into the supply chain. Man, that was exciting. So real quick, we know that you mentioned SpaceX, Elon Musk, big part of the commercialization of space flight, right? But we also know that Blue Origin is coming up with, they have a facility there. They will be launching rockets and building them, I believe, and
yes,
self-contained facility. How can South Florida participate? What do we need to do to take advantage of the great opportunities that are presenting themselves at the state level, but they're at Central Florida?
Well, one of the challenges we have, and one of the lessons we learned early on, was we can't, we're smart enough to know we don't drive the market. We can best try to foresee where the market is going to go and what it's going to need, and position our toolkit as best as possible, and working with regional partners and things like that to sort of guide the market where it's inevitably going to go anyway, because you can only push a market so far. It's not, the markets behave on their own. But I think particularly what's going on, what the mayor was just addressing there, the need for employment opportunities in South Miami-Dade, as South Florida grows, and we've been very attentive to the growth of capital and venture capital becoming, transitioning out of New York and Silicon Valley and coming to Florida and Texas, sort of respectively. That creates opportunity. Capital usually goes to where talent is. So the fact that it's coming here is a recognition that there's innovation talent already in South Florida, but that creates inevitably the problems of prices going up when too much is piling into a single location. So how do we position and take advantage of the toolkits and the opportunities that, as the market gets too expensive elsewhere, it inevitably starts looking for different opportunities? And it would seem that South Miami-Dade is a great opportunity for that next phase of economic development. How we make that happen is still TBD. It's not like we've got a cookie cutter plate for making that happen. It's looking for opportunities and having the insight, the imagination, and hopefully the experience and the lessons learned to take advantage of those opportunities as we see them coming. And part of that is just talking to mayors and people such as yourself.
Mayor, any thoughts?
Well, I think that's an interesting conversation we can have to see what you need and what we have, and marry the two together. I know what we've got in South Dade is plenty of land, a lot of industrial, a lot of commercial space out there that's not lived up to its potential just yet. It's waiting to be developed. And I've noticed that other parts of the county that do those types of, that have a type of land, are getting filled up, and it's very, very expensive. And so that may be an opportunity where we can get together. We have a tremendous workforce too. We've got several 100,000 people in the south end of the county that I don't know if they fit your needs or not. We have to explore that, but lots of people that would seem to be willing to work very close to home if we could do it with the land that we have available.
So one of the things I learned in my limited conversations and dealings with, which became quite intricate, with dealing with your industries, right, was that workforce development and preparedness was almost as important as incentives for businesses to grow. And I think that what we need to do is really grasp do a needs assessment of what industries we can play in and how we can train people. Guys, do you guys know of any particular training or any particular part of the state that's focusing on workforce development, specifically in the smart technology industry?
Well, I know that there's a lot of activity occurring across the state, and the state's made some significant improvements over the last couple of years. I know in no small measure thanks to your efforts, Robert, particularly on the apprenticeship side, because there's always going to be a demand for your engineering and postgraduate type work. But much of the real value add that is coming, such as Blue Origin's manufacturing and OneWeb and Northrop Grumman and the other stuff that's occurring up here on the Space Coast, you need touch labor. You don't necessarily need the engineering degree, but you need to know how to actually touch and build things with advanced manufacturing, 3D printing, CNC machines, things of that nature, which are, require a definite amount of talent and skill and certification. And I think the state has been behind the curve for quite some time in terms of what the state offers and the coordination it brings to the table compared to other states like Alabama and South Carolina, Texas to some extent. So there's been a lot of progress, but it needs to continue. I think you made the reference that workforce is as important as incentives, and I think what we've learned is workforce is a heck of a lot more important than incentives, because you can throw money at people to try to bring them to your location, but if you don't have the talent, it's dumb for them to come there. But if you have the talent, you don't need to throw money at them. Having skilled talent is probably the single most important component of a business decision about relocating or expansion. So the more Florida can focus on that, the better off we're all going to be.
And I'd like to bring up a point, so thank you for that, because thank you for the compliment. I don't think had much to do with it. I think you guys were doing a great job to begin with, and I thank you for that. But so for the viewers, so you don't get lost in this conversation, we're talking about jobs that are higher wage jobs, and we know how expensive it is to live in South Florida. Right?
Very expensive.
So we're talking about jobs that can easily go up into the six figures. I mean, who doesn't need a job that can provide that, right? Mayor, any thoughts on, like, I know your mind's probably going as to what we can do and what we can, but please elaborate. Let's hear what you're thinking.
I think one of the most critical aspects that we can do is understand economic development better. And that means not only what groups like Space Florida need to get started, but understanding ourselves, what we have, what our assets are, and how to leverage those to marry these two things up. For instance, we have a very healthy university system in Miami-Dade County, and those are the guys that can likely help us train a workforce for whatever job skills that they're going to need going forward in any particular industry. And it's not you just can't throw a dart at a board on this. You've got to know what your targets are and then systematically go about it. So including the business leaders, including the community leaders, elected officials, folks from the university system, understanding what we are in the community, what our strengths and weaknesses are, and then how to marry them up with the various different industries that may play a role in this. I think we're at the very beginning stages of that in this end of the county, and probably Miami-Dade County in general to a large extent. And we need to take those next steps so that we can take things like this relationship a little bit further.
You know, Dale, one thing that's of great importance here to notice and to mention about the reemergence of the space industry in Florida, which was dead for all intentional purposes maybe a decade ago, right? Is the fact that you guys had really embarked on a collaborative effort with the private sector. And that's really important. So as South Florida is being dubbed or called to become the next tech hub, industry tech hub, we can't forget about local industries, right? I mean, local homegrown tech companies that are emerging. I'd like to get your thoughts on maybe calling upon some of those to come with the stakeholders and join the stakeholders, the elected officials, and the schools and the industry, right, to further identify those needs and how we can train people. Your thoughts? Is that possible?
Well, I guess from my perspective, I think that's absolutely essential because, like I said before, bringing Space Florida to South Miami-Dade isn't the objective. And we don't really we bring a toolkit, but it's the company that has to have, we can advertise and we actually don't advertise that much because most of the industry that we're after, either they already know about us, or if they're starting to look, they'll learn very quickly about what we have. I think the challenge for South Miami-Dade or anywhere else is elevating your profile so that industry becomes aware of you and what the opportunities are. And that you about bringing together the various stakeholders in South Florida. That's absolutely what you ought to do, because being able to demonstrate that you can attract and retain the type of millennial high-skilled talent, that's the big jobs wars that's going on across the country now. And you need to demonstrate that you're in a position to compete with that. Once those companies start, sniffing around and looking at, hey, well, let's go investigate South Miami-Dade, because there's opportunity down there. There's people and there's land. And what we can do is help them defray some capital expense, because our toolkit, as was referenced in the video, has pretty narrow application. It has to be on public land. And there's a lot of things associated with it, but in that niche, it's a very, very powerful toolkit. And when leveraged with other capabilities brought to the table by different regional partners, cities, counties, state, Career Source, Enterprise Florida, you really can bring a credible negotiating position to the table. So I think elevating your profile, letting people know that you're aggressive, would be, and we're certainly happy to help with that. But I guess I don't want to make it sound like we're the target. We're not the target. We help bring the targets.
And that's, I think, what we're doing in South Dade is identifying the various industries that are currently in the community and those that are thinking about coming to the community, and how do we attract them to the community? Because there's a number of different industries that I think we can attract and bring here. And the aerospace and space technologies are a segment of that population. And we're in the process now of trying to identify all that. One of the economic development organizations had just completed an economic development study to start to get the lay of the land and exactly what our assets are. And so it's a process that we're beginning to do again in South Dade.
How can we get a hold of that copy of that study?
The Economic Development Council, South Dade had just produced it, and I guess some of the cities helped fund it. Pinecrest, Palmetto Bay, Cutler Bay, and Homestead helped fund it, so we should be able to get a copy and make it public. We're trying to make it as public as possible so that we can have a community-wide conversation. We don't have all the answers. That's why we want to start the conversations so that we can figure out what are the best questions to ask and how to go through these processes. And that's the first step. Absolutely.
So I love the fact that you're saying you don't have all the answers, because that's the first piece of progress, right? We don't have all the answers. We go out and look for them. But Dale, I agree with you. Space Florida for me has always been a resource. And again, they'll help market the state and the industry. But I think that I would be lost in not mentioning the neat things that are happening on the Space Coast. So you've recently had a couple launches, significant launches, right? SpaceX last week launched some satellites into orbit. Can you talk a little bit?
They're doing it again this week. They launched on Sunday. They're launching again on Friday.
And they're landing the orbiters. I mean, not the orbiters, but they're landing the rockets, right?
Yeah, they're returning the boosters. And the interesting one, the one that launched on Sunday, was the second one we've had, which flew just offshore from where you are, because it was the second polar launch that we've had from the Cape since 1967. The first one was about 5 months ago. And that's significant because getting into polar orbit is not the most common, but it is a requirement for a number of launch payloads. And that adds the capability that Florida brings to the commercial marketplace to meet any orbital trajectory. We did that back in early 60s, but one of the second stages fell on Castro's Cuba and killed a cow, and he made highlight of it and rubbed it in the US's face. So we stopped that. But now with the robust performance of SpaceX's vehicle and the new capabilities the FAA and the Air Force and Space Force now has to make sure that it doesn't go off course either into the Bahamas or into your communities, the technology's evolved that we can do that now from the Cape. So I would anticipate you'll see more launches that will go offshore, and when it goes at the right time in an evening, every now and then it's going to be quite the show in South Florida.
And we're also looking at weekly launches. Am I correct? You're still looking at weekly launches from the Cape?
We're looking at 51 launches this year, which would be pretty close to once a week.
Yep. Yeah. And in addition to that, are you still looking at launching the build out of the space station?
Space station is done. The next component is going to be what NASA is trying to drive toward. Is the International Space Station should be good for another 10 years, maybe longer. But the goal, eventually it does wear out like everything else. The goal is to create a marketplace where other countries and the private sector, the latter being the most important, start putting up their own international space stations. And there's a company out of Texas, there's actually 3 companies, but Houston Spaceport just announced Axiom will be building their private space station components there in Houston. We would have liked it here, but win some to lose some. But I think we're going to be very anxious to see to it that to the extent we can, we capture as much of that, the new space stations that are going to be coming online from the private sector, that'll be going up in the next couple of years, which is going to be increasingly important because this year China launches the first component of its space station. So we are competing.
So before we introduce, it looks like the Mayor Cava, is trying to log on, which is great to have her on the conversation. But I wanted to point out, I think the mayor's on, almost on. So I wanted to point out that for all our emerging tech industries, think about this. The space station, that you will have tourist travel eventually. You have people living there on a regular basis, working there. Think of all the research and development and innovative outcomes that will be provided just by being able to work in space. I'm really excited. I think the revenue and the potential economic benefit for the state of Florida, let alone our area, selfishly, our area, South Florida, is immense. But I think if we have a takeaway would be that it's up to us to define where we go for the future. Am I correct?
Yeah, I would agree. We can't sit here and wait for things to come to us any longer. We have to aggressively seek them out and explore every single option that we can, and get the best opportunities to locate here. It's a competitive world out there, and whether you're competing for rapid transit or economic development, you've got to speak with one voice in your community, and that's what we need to do.
Totally agree. Mayor, are you Mayor Cava? Okay, we're still waiting on the mayor. Dale, any thoughts on what we've covered so far? There she is. Mayor, good afternoon. How are you?
Doing very well. Excellent to be with you.
Thank you for joining us. I don't know if you've caught any of the conversation. We have Mayor Joseph Corradino with us, my co-host today.
Hi, Mayor.
And we have
Hi, Mayor.
representative of the state, and I think you guys have met, right? Dale Ketcham from Space Florida. We've just been talking about the opportunities, the resource that they provide to us. Dale's been briefing us on what's going on in the Space Coast, throughout the state, in the aerospace industry. And we wanted to bring you on because this conversation deals with economic development in collaboration with smart technology, use of smart technology. And I know you've been a strong supporter of this movement, which I'm really excited to say, of converting South Dade, or South Florida, right? Not South Dade, but South Florida, Miami-Dade specifically, into a tech hub. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that, Mayor.
We're ready.
Good deal.
It's really exciting. Look, in this time when people can work virtually from anywhere, why not live in a place that you love? So I think we are the beneficiaries of some of the exodus from some of those colder and less engaging places. So people know that we have the sun, we have the fun, socially distanced, of course, in this time period. We have incredible outdoor venues. We have the diversity of culture, the dynamism of our cultural life. So we are definitely a wonderful, wonderful place to not just visit, but live. And so a lot of people catching on. And obviously, Mayor of City of Miami has been active in the Twitter sphere. I've joined him there on occasion, and through some different apps, we've been having chats. He just announced the appointment of a chief technology officer to lead the effort, and we're going to be partnering up. We'll find a way to partner up to make it a city and county effort. So I'm excited. I heard Mayor Corradino also, just the tail end, saying we're ready, willing, and able, and I join in that.
Yeah, so Mayor Suarez sends his regards. He will be joining us in the next few weeks because he's just working his schedule out like you did. Thank you for that. And before I turn it over to my co-host and Dale, congratulations, Mayor. The first female mayor of Dade County, historic, shattering the ceiling, right? The glass ceiling.
Shattered glass right here. I'll show you.
Outstanding.
There you go.
Congratulations.
Pretty exciting. And it's been a pleasure to work with you, Robert, and your term in office and your good work in the community, and happy to join you. And Mayor Corradino and I are frequent Zoomers, and we spend a lot of time planning together.
Yeah, I would like to thank the mayor. She's done a remarkable job in one of the most difficult circumstances that anybody could find themselves in, transitioning in the different phases of the pandemic, trying to get folks to behave as healthily as they can, yet put together a plan for how to distribute vaccines that don't necessarily exist right now, and keep everybody calm and patient. And that's no small feat, but she's doing a remarkable job, and the leadership is comforting to all of us that are watching it happen and trying to participate in it. So thank you, Mayor, for everything you're doing. It's remarkable.
Thank you for your kind words.
Well, Mayor, on behalf of Space Florida, we look forward to working with you. I know that, as I was saying earlier in the show, our job is to grow the aerospace industry in the state of Florida, and particularly our focus on this call is commercial space and space marketplace. And if we are going to fully leverage, achieve the goal we have for ourselves over the next couple of decades of making Florida the primary port of entry, if you will, for human activity in space, and bringing people and payloads up, but equally important, bringing people and payloads down to network with the world, we're going to need to make sure that we leverage all of the assets of the state of Florida. That's the only way we're going to be able to compete. So the capabilities, the technology, the innovation, the capital that's available in South Florida has got to be a key component of our effort. So we're looking forward to working with you.
And the human capital, because
Absolutely.
we have really smart, creative, energetic, ambitious people, and we need to better align those talents with these opportunities. So definitely, as we're luring new tech and we're growing our homegrown tech, we have to be sure that it's an equitable growth, that it leaves nobody behind, and it really taps our unique talents and multilingual skills and so on.
Well, and I think one of the things we're dealing with here on the Space Coast is we've been so successful in bringing so many high-tech companies here, particularly after the retirement of the shuttle. It's a great problem to have, but it's a serious problem that needs to be addressed. That puts a real burden on the housing, and stresses everything. But you're also that a society needs to deal with, and particularly problems that are going to be laid on your table. But it's also bringing the kind of high-skilled, high-wage jobs that's going to create the resources with some imagination and creativity will be better positioned to address those problems. So we create what has been created elsewhere, and hopefully are proactive enough to deal with those problems on the front end.
Right.
So people aren't fleeing here because we have created additional problems.
Right. And because we do have a high cost of living and our pay scale is relatively low, we don't want just newcomers to push out those
Absolutely.
Our natives. And so we have to be very, very mindful as we develop that we do it in a way that's inclusive and builds not only our talents, but builds on our heritage, our traditions. And by the way, I'm a regionalist. I recently had to step down as chair of the South Florida Regional Planning Council because of my election. But the mega region, we're crossing boundaries. The jobs are, you live one place, you work another, the educational institutions. So what's happening up there on the Space Coast, we can definitely support down here in South Florida as well.
Excellent. That's appreciated.
Yeah, and that brings us to a close, which all three of you have hit on, the need for collaboration, working with our local businesses to grow their footprint in this emerging industry arena, but also this issue of workforce preparedness and development. I think that's a conversation that I would love to continue with you and the mayor and Space Florida and all our stakeholders as we continue to run these series on tech and the economic development possibilities that we have before us. Mayor, I can't thank you enough. Dale, as always.
Glad to do it.
My hat's off to you, brother. I really appreciate your support. Any closing thoughts from anyone?
Well, Robert, just from what we're dealing with here in South Dade, we're at the beginning stages. We've completed, like I said, our economic development analysis. We're going to be making sure that we're meeting and building stakeholder group and inclusion with all of the elected officials, community members from from Chamber South, the Economic Development Council, the Homestead Chamber, those folks, and really trying to make sure that everybody understands what we're doing and speak with one giant voice here in South Dade. And I think that will be very helpful to us.
Well, thank you all to the Millers, Michael Grant Miller, the community newspapers team, Tommy always behind the scene producing these shows. I can't thank you enough. With that, having said that, everybody have a great day.
Thank you.